It's Monday and time for the Back to Business podcast, featuring Calgary's industry leaders. Welcome today's show host, Kim Hayden.
Are you an inclusive employer? Have you found employees that want to be the advocates, want to work, want to be there? You may want to consider whether being an inclusive employer will accommodate, people with special needs that want to be there and learn from you and grow with you. Our guest today, Matt Ashdown with Goodwill, is here to talk about all the amazing programs they offer. Goodwill is not just a place where we go and drop off the sweater Grandma gave us. Goodwill is an organization to create a space for everyone. And they'll even help you, the employer, find a way to accommodate and grow with your next best employee. But first, our land acknowledgement.
In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Ga'aina, Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Eahe Nakota Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta.
Alrighty, Matt, you got your notes?
Yeah.
You're ready?
I'm ready.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
This is going to be a slightly different conversation than what we normally have, but I think this is a very incredibly valuable conversation because as we move forward, we're going to start uncovering the myths and the realities and what we can do in our day-to-day to get these equity spaces for people of all abilities.
Sounds
So,
good.
Matt, first, I'd love for you to share a little bit of who is Matt?
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really good to be here. So my name is Matt Ashdown. I'm currently in the role of Director of Mission Impact at Goodwill Industries of Alberta, which operates in Edmonton, Calgary, and a little bit in Grand Prairie at this point. I'm from Edmonton. I live there with my wife, Christine, and my son, Kingsley, who's 8, and my daughter, Abigail, who's 5. We have a Dashin named Ziggy as well. I started in this role last March. My whole life has been basically dedicated to supporting folks with disabilities. I fell into it. It really started by getting cut from a hockey team when I was about 13 years old. And I landed on a team that was a little bit lower and happened to bump into a friend of mine named Jorah. And his brother happened to have Down syndrome. And his mom was like, "Hey, Matt, we're looking for a babysitter. Might you be interested in helping out with Nathan?" So I was like 13 years old. And I was like, "Yeah, for sure. I would do that." And after a few years of babysitting, his mom approached me again and said, "Matt, you've been babysitting for a couple of years. And we think you do a really good job. You take really good care of him." I happen to also sit on a board of directors for a summer camp that he goes to. It's out of a school, and 6 weeks every summer. A bunch of kids go there, and it's just a great opportunity for them to keep some of their routines in check from the school year, have some fun, and get out and do stuff in the summertime. So I threw my name in the hat, and I was 16 years old at the time. This was 1998. Excuse me. And, at first it took me a little bit, but I really fell in love with that role. And by the end of that first summer, I totally changed my career. At that point in time, I thought I was either going to be a mechanic or a welder. But by the end of that summer, I was looking at maybe special ed teacher or that kind of thing. So really just wanted to get into the world of supporting folks with disabilities. I found that people with disabilities, just that connection, that human connection, just really, I learned so much about the importance of it. It was specifically an individual that has autism that, it took a long time for him to warm up to me, but someone else that supported him that was coming along to help said, "Hey, Matt, why don't you go wrestle with him?" Before we knew it, we were wrestling in the pool. He was pushing me into the deep end, and I was being all dramatic, jumping in and stuff, and it was amazing. So I ended up working at that camp for 5 summers, And it was during that time that I found the rehabilitation practitioner program offered through Grant McEwen, and back in the day it was also offered at Mount Royal and places like that. Graduated high school and started my career. I started working in some support homes for folks with disabilities, and eventually found my way into the employment services space. Did that for about a year after I graduated with the rehabilitation practitioner diploma. And then, started doing some very part-time outreach, like off-campus courses through the University of Calgary. I got a bachelor's degree in community rehabilitation and disability studies. And then took a little bit of a fork in the road and ended up working in Edmonton's inner city at a place called Bissell Centre, where we supported lots and lots and lots of folks who were experiencing houselessness and really extreme poverty and that type of stuff. And it was in that role that I found myself in a position where, my position was getting absorbed by this new thing called Housing First. At the time, it was 2010. And so I decided to put my name in the hat for the manager role and somehow got it. And so I was the first employee of the Homeless to Homes program at Bissell Centre. And we built that program from the ground up. And we started with just a small team of 5 of us that were, our job was to help 80 people a year find a place to live and support them to stay there. And over the next almost 10 years, I ended up supporting about 2,400 Edmontonians to either move out of houselessness or prevent them from becoming houseless in the first place. I left Bissell in 2019, returned to the disability services space. Now, disability services and homeless services are very similar. Actually, I think most people that happen to be houseless experience some sort of disability. But ended up going back, working in a residential environment in a senior manager role. Did that through COVID, which was exhausting. Constantly.
Yeah, I bet it was.
Totally. We were constantly evolving to meet new government restrictions and mandates, constantly, trying to help people stay safe and those kinds of things. And it got to be a bit much. And in 2023, I made the decision to move out, to get out of housing, because it was, the challenge with housing is you're kind of always on. Housing happens 24/7. Found my way back into employment services, fell back in love with it. And then it was last March I started at Goodwill, and it's been absolutely fantastic ever since. So in my role at Goodwill, I'm the Director of Mission Impact, which means that I oversee our Career Connections program. Mission Impact, the portfolio at Goodwill, is basically all about helping folks with disabilities find work. So Goodwill, I've learned in the last almost 11 months, is an organization we happen to be one of the larger employers of people with disabilities in Alberta. Around 23 or 4% of our employees self-identify as having as some sort of disability. So right there, we're an organization that very much values, creating inclusive workplaces and those kinds of things. And when I learned about Goodwill, that's Goodwill all over the world. Goodwill started over 100 years ago. And the whole point of it has been, we're going to take donated goods and help use those as a conduit to help people with disabilities develop skills and develop meaningful work. And, through the power of work, increase people's dignity and those kinds of things. So within Mission Impact, there's our Goodwill at Work program, which is basically a bunch of micro social enterprises where we actually create employment for people with disabilities. Some of the things we do there are a cleaning cloth program where folks with disabilities cut up cloths that couldn't be sold in our thrift stores, turn them into rags that we then sell in our stores. Or sell at car washes or sell to industries and those kinds of things. We also have partnerships with like TELUS, where we deliver pamphlets in residential neighborhoods. And currently actually the newest thing that's pretty cool is we've developed this, it's called basically where we're creating these denim handbags and aprons out of denim that hasn't been sold, and basically selling those, and they're quite nice and those kinds of things.
Oh,
so
brilliant!
Really cool, yeah.
Brilliant. I love the whole upcycle thing.
Totally.
The conscious shopping, or I like. There's so many names, that are eco-friendly names around being conscious about what you're shopping for, right? And I honestly, I'm a thrifter. I have, and I upcycle and recycle, and yeah, I've always been that way. Now, I want to bring this conversation around a bit because, and it was interesting that you talked about the housing aspect. So I ran across a young man who had a degenerative disease, and they knew when he was born that he would, by the time he was in his early 20s, be in a wheelchair. But just because he was losing his physical abilities did not negate the fact that he was still a 20-something-year-old man.
Totally.
And wanted to have some good times. And yet they were so desperate to find a spot for him because there's so few accommodations out there that can accommodate a wheelchair that, he ended up in not a very good home space. And he really just wanted to be on his own. I think this is just me putting kind of my perception, right? I personally have no physical disabilities. I've been very blessed that way. And I mean, some of my children will beg to differ on this, but I don't have any mental challenges. But I would assume that everybody's cognitive as to where their limitations are, and yet they still see all the milestones that their peers have, and they still want to be in that space.
Totally.
Am I
I would think
that?
so. Absolutely. I think that's a huge part of some of the challenges that comes with having a disability or being houseless or that kind of stuff is, you kind of have this view of like, this is what I ought to be doing right now. But there's this barrier that gets in the way and those kinds of things. So basically my whole life has been dedicated towards helping people figure out how to navigate those barriers, to figure out how to deal with them, how to reduce them, or get the supports to work around them and those kinds of things. So in my housing days, we would do things like have partnerships with different organizations that offered accessible housing and those kinds of things, and advocate that there needs to be more of it. In the workplace now, it's very much, our Employer Inclusion Accelerator program, for example, will come in and do workplace assessments and say, here's some things you can do, here's some tangible things you can do to help create a more accessible workspace and create a more welcoming space for folks with disabilities to work here at. And what's fascinating is most of those accommodations, research suggests, are quite cheap or even free. Right? People think
you're still in the architectural side. You're creating bridges.
Totally.
That are bringing people together.
Yeah.
And I know that we sat down and we said right from the beginning, our goal with this interview is to get people to understand how they can contribute to a world that has more inclusivity within employment. And I really find this fascinating. I have a sibling who I don't think she listens to the show, so I'm just going to totally talk about her. She has her oldest child is he is on the spectrum, and it has become harder for him as he's gotten older. Yet this was a child when he was 5 could name every president.
Right, yeah.
Brilliant. And I'm just looking at this. So there's a lot of young adults who maybe didn't have the best opportunities to nurture their unique talents. And now it's coming to how do we as a society help them grow into the amazing human being they were designed or destined to be. So let's go. I want to talk about some of the ways, and I really am intrigued by, you had mentioned something around a new opportunity that's coming together around mentorship. And here at the club in the last 18 months, here at the Petroleum Club, CalPeak Club has put into place a young professionals group to help mentor the 35 and under so that they can navigate successfully in. And so people are coming in that are in their, been in business for 30 years. What can they impart to these young professionals? So when you mentioned that, I'm sitting here going, okay, so here's a need, right? we only rise to the opportunities that are presented.
Totally.
So let's talk about the what did you call it? You had a great name,
Mentorability. Yeah.
mentorability. I want to talk about this because this is such a great opportunity that I think it will give young people who always see is the challenge and the strive to get to next level. And I'm going to make more money. I'm going to do this and that. It may give them perspective.
So
Growth.
Yeah, so mentorability is it's a program that's offered in Calgary and Edmonton through Gateway Association, which is Friends of Goodwills. We love working with them, and it's a national initiative. It's offered in, I believe, every province and territory by different organizations. Gateway just happens to be the one throughout Alberta that happens to offer it. But basically, what it does is they're trying to kind of create that space where young people or people that are interested in pursuing a different career can go out and talk to people that are already doing that career. So, like, for example, when I learned that, working with folks with disabilities was a job I wanted to do, if I found somebody that was already doing the work, I would buy them a Tim Hortons or whatever and go and say, hey, Jim, I heard you support people with disabilities. Talk to me about what that works like. Tell me about what you do for a living. What does a day look like? Those kinds of things, right? When I became a manager, similar things. I think one of the wisest things I did was actually looked around and said, who do I know that is a manager that's doing well? And I'd go have lunch with them and go have coffee with them and try and get a sense of what they were doing or what they were doing to make the experience of working with them so great. So then I was able to learn as much from them as possible. So what mentorability does is basically trying to formalize that process to say, hey, we have this pool of mentors that is able to, come and have these conversations with folks, and they collaborate with a number of organizations, Goodwill being one of them, that can say, hey, we have these folks with disabilities that are interested in all kinds of different positions. I'm working with someone who wants to be a plumber. Okay, there's this plumber that that's a mentor, and
Yep.
we can now we can call them up and say, hey, are you available to have coffee with someone we support, or are you able to spend a half a day with them, or that kind of thing? And they can basically say, hey, what does a day in the life look like? What was the steps to you getting to where you're at? How much do you make? Right, that kind of stuff. Right, what are the biggest barriers to you? How early in the morning do you have to wake up? Those kinds of things. I think that's critically important because, a lot of the jobs I thought I wanted to have when I was a kid, I wouldn't actually want now that I know, right? Now that I know what's all into it, right?
It gives us room to grow.
Totally.
And I would think that to the mentors, the lessons that they can learn from the mentees would be unprecedented in the sense that you're having a deeper conversation and you're having to listen to what's coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Right? So you're learning from yourself through the conduit of this individual who is looking to learn from you. One of the things I love about this new world that we're living in, and yes, I found this young woman on TikTok. Okay, so whatever. I look for hope analytics. So I want to see analytics that are based on hopeful stories. Hope analytics are my thing.
Very cool.
So I look for inspiring stories, and there's this incredible sister duo, and the older sister is a fitness instructor, and I believe they are from the EU somewhere and immigrated to the United States. I don't have the full backstory, but the younger sister has Downs, and to watch how she helps her sister optimize her personal health, and to see that when we think of Downs, we all think of a certain body shape, mental facilities and everything. And yet when you see this young woman, she's very aware she has Downs, and yet she works very hard because she's inspired and supported. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the mentorship comes in. From the flip side, as an employer, mm-hmm. as a business, I, and other employers I know, we tend to look at how much will this cost me? How long is this going to take? Will this actually work? And there may be some trepidation there from, should I just donate money? these people don't want our money.
Yeah.
They want opportunity.
Totally.
So I'm going to put that right out there, folks. It's not about the money. It is about creating space within a very chaotic world that every person is seen, heard, and valued. So let's talk about how Goodwill comes in and can help support those who are looking at in 2025 creating a space for somebody that has a different set of abilities.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for asking that. So to start, I mean, we believe that work needs to be meaningful. I don't know if I was off work once for about 10 weeks, and I didn't know what left from right. I didn't know up from down. It was like I had to get back to work. It was tough to be out of work for a little bit. And so I do think that, work needs to be a place where, in addition to work, doing a job and collecting a paycheck, where we can connect with people to the best, to as much as we want to, where people are looking out for us, where people care about us, where we're contributing to something bigger than ourselves, where we're part of something, So we sit down with folks right off the hop and say, what is it that you're looking for with work, and what does meaningful work look like to you? What would that mean to you, and those kinds of things. And we would ask questions that would lead us to a place from where we can come and talk with somebody from a place of empathy, where we understand, here's the types of things you're interested in, and what types of roles, what types of activities and roles might kind of help bring that out in you in a way that contributes to the grander society and those kinds of things. So we're really, from the get-go, we're already starting to kind of say, what needs to be in place for you to be successful in those kinds of things. We'll start working on developing a strategy. We set goals with folks around hey, you're interested in this type of work. You're interested in, and what are the kind of non-negotiables? What neighborhood would it need to be in? That kind of stuff, depending on how people get around and those kinds of things. And then we customize training for folks. So we have a whole host of training that we offer to individuals. Some of those are safety tickets, some of the first aid or H2S Alive, those kinds of things. We're able to support people to get some of their startup material they need. So things like work boots or safety gloves,
Yes.
that kind of stuff. So we're able to support people to get some of those types of things in place. And then we work collaboratively with employers. So our job development specialists, we have a great team down here in Calgary of job development specialists. Their jobs are basically to work with individuals, work with the people we support to help them apply for roles, but also to work with employers to say, we have a few people that are interested in this type of work. What would have to be true for, what can we do to help them be successful here, and those kinds of things. So they're out hitting the ground running. They're working in communities directly with employers, that type of stuff to really kind of find that fit. Once a position's found for somebody, we're able to provide a little bit of coaching on the job. Here in Calgary, some programs, our program up in Edmonton has a little bit of a different funding stream and a little bit of a different demographic of folks with disabilities, so we're able to provide a little bit more support. But here in Calgary, we're able to support folks to learn the role, to support folks. We're available at a call to the employer or the individual to say, hey, come on in, help us sort through this issue that's come up. We're even able to support, if need be, with some initial wage top-ups. So, for example, there's a wage subsidy that we're able to help people utilize, where we can cover half of someone's wage for the first 3 months, just to make sure that it's kind of a good fit and those kinds of things. So
it also gives a little bit of a buffer so you can extend out some of the training. So instead of giving somebody 6 weeks of training, you can accommodate 12 weeks of training.
Yeah.
I think it's really important as we move forward. The world's changing so rapidly, and I just believe that the more we get to know about mental capabilities, how the body and the brain are constructed, and as we bring technology in, I think it's going to take all of us to make this new amazing creators economy.
Totally.
I had an honor. I actually sit on a media panel for the NPS, which is a program that's affiliated with Jack Canfield. It's a publishing house that publishes all the Chicken Soup for the Soul, and they help train people on how to present to media so you can get stories written about your book or your programs, and you can get on other people's podcasts. And one of the gentlemen that sits on this is a gentleman that runs a podcast. He is autistic, significantly on the spectrum. He'll tell you he is. And he'll tell you he likes blueberries. But the one thing he brings to the table is he brings opportunity for people who don't feel they fit into other people's media streams, that they know he will listen and he will, because people now are writing books from all capabilities.
Right, yeah.
And all perspectives. And so it's very important for those who have abilities, no matter what those abilities are based on what we consider norm, to really step up and step out. And if you are willing to be a larger voice within this noisy world, I love the fact that we're having employers and we have people like Goodwill that are bringing this bridge together. So how do we bring this together? Because 100 years ago, we just shut the door.
Totally.
Don't want to see any of this. Yeah. Now, we're not going to open the door. We're going to say, okay, how do we accommodate so everybody has opportunity? One of the benefits that I'm hearing here is that from an employer's perspective, especially small business and those in the entrepreneurial spaces where you're less than like 10 people.
Yeah.
One of the things that we get caught up is we run so fast, everything is shifting and changing. And I may be wrong here, but I can see how taking time to slow down a little and train somebody to do a specific task that needs to be done in your programming, in your business, and developing those SOPs, those systems of operation, right? The procedures, and having that person help keep you on task.
Right.
Do you ever see that where sometimes somebody with a disability or a different ability helps actually keep projects on task?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting. Back when I first, the first kind of when I first got into employment services, way back in 2003, right out of college, there was an individual that was doing work for the university archives that I supported, and basically one of the politicians donated his life's work to the University of Alberta, and basically, but a lot of it was like newspaper clippings and stuff, and what I understood was that newspaper breaks down a lot faster than like paper like that. Yes. So he was basically photocopying everything. I'm sure someone is now doing it all electronically, but basically, yeah, that was his project. He was like 2 days a week, I think. They're just kind of photocopying this work and contributing to making sure that this person's life work was there. What I find is what people tell us is that when people with disabilities are active in a workplace, generally speaking, the culture of that workplace is stronger. People with disabilities tend to stay in jobs longer than most people do, right? There's stories you'll see on LinkedIn sometimes of they're celebrating someone's 30th anniversary at McDonald's and the person happens to have a disability or those kinds of things. But what happens is that, being inclusive, bringing in somebody with a disability will often just improve the workplace for everybody and make it more of a family feel for everybody. And typically over time, that ends up creating better outcomes for the business as a whole, right? If the employees are engaged, they're happy, they're going to make the customers happy. When the customers are happy, they're going to be spending more money and the business does better. So I think, to me, it's a no-brainer. Like bring in someone with a disability to support in any way possible. There's lots of folks with disabilities that, when you were talking a lot about folks with autism and that kind of stuff, there are folks that, the types of jobs we're doing, like really task focused, looking pattern recognition and stuff like that. There are folks who are hardwired to be really good at that type of work. So it really makes sense to do that. There's a fellow up in Edmonton named Aaron who will make art for people. He'll commission art for folks out of Lego, for example. Brick Art by Aaron is his LinkedIn page, and he popped into mind for me too. He was able to kind of turn his passion for Lego into like a business for himself, and he's doing quite well. So
amazing. I'll have to tell my oldest about that. My oldest is phenomenal with Lego.
That's awesome.
And even at 35, it's still like it gives him time to decompress from what the rest of the world expects from him.
It's funny you say that.
He just loves it.
Since having kids, I've all of a sudden become a big Lego guy too.
Oh,
it's great.
Lego.
It's
Gosh,
January,
love.
so I got calluses on my hands from helping my son with his Lego sets.
As long as you don't have bruises on your feet from them being left on
Right?
the floor.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
All of this conversation brings me to, do you know Milk Jar Candle?
I do.
Oh, Holly is, I want to do a huge shout out. If we are to model our businesses after anybody, take a very close look at how Holly has grown a hobby into a global industry with the support of people with disabilities or special needs, however you choose to phrase that. And I've watched her speak many times. She's an amazing, amazing woman. And this is a woman that was on a career path to be a nurse. Yeah. And she, like yourself, had the opportunity to spend time with somebody with special needs and learn that you learn so much more.
Totally.
When you have an opportunity to see the world through a unique lens.
Yeah, Holly and I were actually on a speaker series together, the Deem speaker series. Goodwill hosted it back in October. October is Disability Employment Awareness Month. And our stories were she talked and then I talked, and super, super smart woman, really humble, really driven. Nothing but good things to say about Holly. Goodwill, I think Goodwill helps, does some work with Milk Jar too. I think we donate a number of, or provide them with a number of like jars and stuff that come in that they then build candles into and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? This was such a great way to sit and rethink. I know a lot of people, especially we're recording this early 2025, and a lot of people are, looking at resolutions and goals for the year and all these things. Maybe sit and take a different look. Mm-hmm. Slow down a little. I think that's one thing that we can learn is that slow down a little, enjoy and embrace. And that's really what I think when you have a unique or dynamic team.
Yeah.
That's what you bring forward.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today on the Back to Business podcast. Be sure to visit calpeteclub.com, calpeteclub.com, to find out more about upcoming events, networking opportunities, and membership. If you are not already a valued member at the CPC, where we are proudly connecting and supporting Calgary's business leaders.